Hi again, this is Russ, and welcome to this lesson on designing network solutions. We're going to be talking about name resolution and network addressing. All right, so name resolution in Azure Virtual Networks. You basically have three options to handle this. One is using Azure DNS private zones. Two is Azure provided name resolution. Or you can use your own DNS server. This can be hosted in Azure or used on-prem. And you can also forward DNS queries to Azure provided DNS servers from your own DNS as well. So here are your basic scenarios you're going to see for name resolution, and some of these may pop up in the exam, so keep an ear open. The first is, of course, name resolution between VMs located in the same virtual network, or Azure Cloud Services role instances in the same cloud service. So we're talking about VMs in the same, VNet or subnets, and say app services or database services. They're going to all basically know each other's names, so that is going to be pretty much in place. And so for name resolution, by default, you'll have Azure provided, but you can also use DNS private zones for that as well. Your second scenario will be resolution between VMs in different virtual networks or role instances in different cloud services. And for that, again, Azure DNS private zones or your own on-prem or Azure hosted DNS server doing the request forwards. All right, next you're going to have your name resolution from an Azure application service using virtual network integration to role instances or VMs in the same network. And for that, we're going to be looking at your own DNS server forwarding queries between networks. All right, next up we have name resolution from app services, web applications to VMs in the same virtual network. And again, going to be your DNS servers doing the name resolution requests. On-prem computer service names and VMs or role instances in Azure. Your DNS server yet again. You can also set this up as a local read-only and then do secondary DNS synced via zone transfer. But really what you'll need to remember is that if you have machines on premise and you want them to know the service names or the VM machine names hosted in Azure, you're going to need your own DNS server to do it. All right, we have resolution of Azure host names from on-premise computers, and that's forwarding queries to your own DNS proxy server that exists in the corresponding virtual network. Reverse DNS for internal IPs. Azure DNS private zones can do this, as can Azure provided name resolution, and that's within Azure virtual networks only. And of course, your own DNS server, which works across the board. And lastly here, we have name resolution between VMs or role instances located in different cloud services, not in a different virtual network or the same virtual network. So we're talking about you have VMs in Azure, and then you have VMs, or say a SQL database or something, in Amazon Web Services. Well, you can't do that outside of a virtual network. So at that point, your DNS is going to be, internet-based, and it's not something you can really configure. So those are going to be the scenarios you're most likely to see in the exam, and they're the answers to them. Hopefully that makes some sense. We'll be talking about name resolution in another lesson as well, which will also give you a diagram on how that works. So we'll call this one done and come over to the next video, and we're going to talk briefly about Azure provided name resolution.